so many decisions in the agency world, in the advertising world at large, are made on hunches, opinions. People don't like that color. Someone's wife said they really like this image or that headline, right? It's so arbitrary. And so I think one of the things we try to get people to realize is you can actually drive business if you move away from that old way of thinking and use this to power like actual creative data-based decisions.
Before we jump into today's episode, I'd like to give a quick shout out to the sponsor for this episode, Ahrefs. Ahrefs provides you with an all-in-one SEO toolset that does everything from rank tracking to backlink analysis, keyword research, and technical audits. The best part, you can now use Ahrefs Webmaster Tools for free to identify and prioritize optimization opportunities for your website, see all the keywords that your web pages are ranking for, take a close look at the websites that link back to and refer you in their content, and analyze other websites to find out what drives their rankings. Visit ahrefs.com/AWT and sign up for free. And now, back to today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the SaaS SEO Show. I'm your host, George Kasiotis, and today I'm very happy to be joined by Jess Cook. Jess is a creative director turned content marketeer with more than 15 years of experience on B2C brands like Ego, Rice Krispies, Blue Cross, Cottonelle, and McDonald's. I hope I got them right. In 2019, she made the move to B2B SaaS. She's currently the head of content at ad tech startup Marpipe, where in her first year, she grew the company's LinkedIn following by 60%, increased the organic site traffic by 135%, and boosted demo sign-up page visits by 40%. That's quite impressive. And I'm very excited to be joined by you, Jess. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, George. I'm a longtime listener, so this is really exciting for me. Thanks for having me.
That's great. Even though I said a couple of things in the intro, could you please share with us a few things about your journey so far, so we can understand what has brought you to B2B SaaS and at Marpipe, where you lead the content efforts?
Absolutely. So I started my career in advertising as a copywriter. I'd always wanted to be in advertising. That was what I went to college for. And my first job right out of school was on the McDonald's account, where I got to write jokes on Happy Meal boxes, which was really fun. Write headlines for billboards that went all over the country for McDonald's. So that was a really, really amazing job right out of school. And that was really where the bug really bit me. This is fun. The fact that I get to do this for a living is pretty incredible. And so from there, I continued to be, copywriter, creative director on lots of different B2C brands, but moved more into the digital space. So for quite a while, I was working on Kellogg and Kimberly-Clark brands. So like you said, Rice Krispies, Pop-Tarts, Eggo, Cottonelle was one. And, this was kind of a time when Facebook was just letting brands kind of into the fold in terms of having their own page and starting their own posts. So got to do a lot of work there with standing up, Rice Krispies Facebook page, right? And how do you talk as a brand in a space where people have only been before? How do you figure that out? So that was really, really interesting. This was kind of also a time where big digital promotions were very in. So, did things started a debate about the right way to roll toilet paper for Cottonelle. We created all of these online videos. Our ads allowed people to vote right inside the ad. We ended up getting 2 million video views about toilet paper, which is really incredible. So, a lot of really fun kind of interactive, big brand digital efforts. So I did that work for around 15 years. And I think a lot of people know like the agency world is pretty demanding in terms of work-life balance. And that started to get a little tough for me as like my family was growing. And, I thought, I was pregnant with my second actually, and thought like, this isn't going to get better with two kids. And so I left the agency world, and I knew that I had, this skill set of kind of storytelling. And I also really love to know like what works, right? Like what am I actually creating that is actually driving business? And so I thought, like, let's take this skill set and see where else I can apply that. And content marketing felt like the right fit. Moving in-house to a tech company seemed really, really exciting to me. And so my first move right out of the agency world was for a B2B SaaS company called Fastly. I was there for 2 years. It's a pretty big company. They had just gone public. And we had a really great content team there. We had about 5 people at one point. We had, 6 or 7 on the design team. So it was like a pretty mature organization at that point. And I learned so much. I will be honest, like moving into content marketing, I thought I knew what it was. But I think coming from the agency world where things are kind of loose and flowy and ideas just have to be cool, you don't really have to like sell in a business case for them, right? So that was a pretty big crash course in 2 years of really learning how not only to create good content and really hone that craft, but the business side of it as well. And about 2 years in there, I got a call from the folks at Marpipe who had just landed their Series A. They were looking to grow the marketing department for the first time and wanted a content marketer. And so I made the move over there and have led content there now for a year as a one-person team on content, as a marketing team of 2.
First of all, I didn't know that there is a right and wrong way to cut toilet paper, but I guess I have to check this debate from the campaign you ran back then. And second, as I understand it, as you were like explaining all these things and sharing them with us, there is some sort of connection with what you have done back in the agency world and all these ads and creative, let's say, approaches to marketing and advertising to what Marpipe does, right? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was what made it such a great fit. So I think to back up a little bit, Marpipe is an ad tech platform. We automate creative testing for ad creative, paid social ad creative. And we do it in a way that's relatively new. And to my knowledge, we're the only one that does it in this way. And that's called multivariate testing. And that sounds really, really fancy and complicated. But really what it is we're taking all of your creative elements, your headlines, your images, your background colors, your calls to action, and we're mixing and matching every single one of them to create every single possible combination. Then you launch the test in front of your own audience. And then I think the biggest value we deliver is, all of the insights that come back from that. So, your audience is kind of voting with their clicks and their engagement and their purchases. And all the time that test is running, we're kind of, racking all of that data up. And you can see in real time, oh, hey, this image, no matter which headline or color I pair it with, always wins. Like we should explore that a bit more. Or this headline, really increased purchases for whatever reason. People really resonated with that. So, let's take that. Let's put that on our homepage. Let's use that wherever we can to get that performance boost in other spaces, right? So it's not only an ad measurement tool for your creative, but also, like real-time market research, like what are people resonating with? And so I think my background in, big brand kind of storytelling and ad creative fit really well there. I think that was part of the reason that it was such an exciting opportunity for me because I got to bring kind of those 2 worlds together.
I agree. And as we were discussing like previously, as I was doing research for this episode, I took a look at your YouTube channel and I saw a video that you published. I don't know who made the video, but it was very interesting in the sense that they were reviewing some ads from a company. I cannot recall the name. And then they were building some ads for this company using Marpipe. And the whole process seemed to me, I'm not an ads guy, by the way, and I don't know as many things about, paid social or anything like that, but it seemed to me very interesting and also very seamless. Like it made this whole process seem a bit easier, I guess, than it really is.
Yeah, absolutely. There's kind of a moment when we give people a demo where their eyes really light up and they're like, oh my gosh, like it really clicks for them. And it's usually when, we've built the ad template, we've kind of dragged and dropped all of the headlines and images in that we want to use. You can see based on the combinations we've made, we're going to have, let's say, 64 ads, and we hit the generate button and all of the ads one by one start to pop up. And I think people realize, one, the time that they're going to save by being able to automate this, two, the scale at which they're going to be able to test. They've just never been able to do that before. It's almost humanly impossible to be able to do it that way. Right now, a lot of people are trying to manually multivariate test, but to do that, you can really only change one thing at a time if you want clean data. And so that process takes a while, right? To change one thing, get enough learnings back to know if it made an impact, change another thing, test again, right? So we just really speed that up. I know a lot of our customers have told us what we used to be able to do in 10 days, we can now do in, say 3. And so just the iterative process has been sped up so quickly. And, those are the companies that are going to really excel and break out in terms of growth over the next few years, are the ones that can find those incremental boosts that others don't know how to find or can't find.
That makes sense. And I find the product to be very interesting and useful, even though, once again, I'm not so much into ads myself, but I find it to be very interesting. Now, let's get into the interesting part, the very interesting part of our conversation today, which is, I will start with a very basic question. How do you approach content strategy at Marpipe?
So content strategy for me, let's start here. I'm a team of one. And so my strategy really has to take that into account. We're a small team, we're Series A, we're trying to use the funding that we have in the most efficient way possible, the smartest way possible. So in order to do that, like that fuels a lot of my thinking around like, how am I going to create? How am I going to repurpose? And what are we going to talk about? So I think the main thing is one, what can I do realistically? Well, realistically, I think I can create, a blog post a week. And I think we could probably we have a podcast called Resting Ad Face, which is a really fun endeavor that we started out in June. And I think we can do an podcast episode every other week. I think that feels like a good cadence, a realistic cadence. And then, from there, kind of knowing, okay, people don't know what multivariate testing is. Like, in order to bring folks in, we need to educate them like on what it is we even do. Why is it different? Why is it better? A lot of people know A/B testing. How can we kind of relate it to that or, make it different from that? And so, trying to figure out like, all right, we kind of have our 2 flywheels. We have our blog and we have our podcast. We have some pillars that we want to talk about there. And then repurposing is like my best friend. So, we create a blog post. I can get, 3 to 5 social posts out of that. That becomes a newsletter feature. That becomes talking points for an episode of Resting Ad Face. We create an episode of Resting Ad Face. I'm cutting promotional clips from there that some are evergreen, some are just more to promote that episode. I can turn an episode of Resting Ad Face into a blog post, right? Like, here are the few highlights from this episode. So a lot of repurposing. And I think it all stems from like just a really deep understanding of our customer and their understanding when they come to us of ad testing and like do they need to know the fundamentals? Do they already know the fundamentals? How deep should we get? How high level should we get, right? So, and then obviously plotting that along the funnel. So we have a lot of content where it's higher funnel around the best practices of ad testing. And then we can get really deep of like, well, what about statistical significance with ad testing, right? Someone who's maybe a little further along might be interested in that kind of a read. So definitely taking into account, like, I'm one person, I do have, every once in a while at my disposal, maybe a freelancer, or I'm lucky enough right now to have an intern. And so, she's been really helpful. So just really finding ways to like use my time efficiently and knowing what it is our customer needs to be educated upon.
I have the impression, and I would like to hear your thoughts on that. This is something that I have discussed with other people who came at the show as well. I have the impression that Marpipe is more of a vitamin than it is a painkiller, meaning that people need to learn why they need to use it, as the problem may not be so obvious. Like, do I really need multivariate testing? First of all, do you agree with my understanding of the product? And if yes, how do you beat that from a con perspective, even though you kind of touched on that in your previous answer?
Yeah, I love that you asked this question, because it's a constant struggle for us, right? That is true, that it can be seen as a nice to have, where it's like, well, we're already doing something kind of good enough. We're testing on our own. It's getting us some results. We're seeing the growth that, we're happy with. How do we overcome that? I think it's really interesting. And I think the best way we've done that so far is, let me back up a little bit. We don't have a free trial. We're not $100 a month tool. And so we're really asking people, one, to learn kind of a new process, and two, to make an investment in it. This is something that should be ongoing, that you can continue to learn from and refine, right? If you find out that images of women with dark hair really resonate with your audience, well, then now you can test 20 different women with 20 shades of dark hair, right? And go from there. You can go deeper, and you can continue to do that as you learn. And I think to get people over that hump of like, well, this is an investment, this is a new process, I have to get this into my workflow somehow. We have to show them significant success from brands who are already on our platform. And so we do that through, we have a lot of great case studies. We tell a lot of stories with our data. I think that's one really unique and ownable thing we do, because we're really the only ones that have this data, right? This multivariate testing, kind of statistics and information that, travel companies saw 70% more purchases of their travel packages when they use beach imagery, right? Not a lot of people have that information in their back pocket. And so we want to use that data to like really draw people in and give them that sense of urgency of, oh, this could be my painkiller, right? Of trying to, I don't want to say hack growth, because I hate that term, but like really find those incremental improvements in our ad creative and make better data-based decisions. Coming from an agency background, so many decisions in the agency world, in the advertising world at large, are made on hunches, opinions. People don't like that color. Someone's wife said they really like this image or that headline, right? It's so arbitrary. And so I think one of the things we try to get people to realize is you can actually drive business if you move away from that old way of thinking and use this to power like actual creative data-based decisions.
Now that I think about it, and what you just said makes sense, but now that I think about it, it may be a painkiller for companies, for example, that spent a lot of money on paid social and also are not quite sure as to what's the ROI from the investment they make, or they want to get better results in general. So maybe for these companies it's a real painkiller, because they do the investment either way. I mean, they can as well like use a tool like Marpipe, and then but this has, from a constant point, now that I think about it, it has to do with like what audiences do you address, like knowing that, so these are the companies that I want as a customer, and I'm going to talk about their problems, knowing that for some other companies that are not quite there yet, like ad budget wise, for example, this may be a vitamin and not so much a painkiller. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, we recommend this to people who spend at least $30,000 a month on paid social for that reason, because, you're already spending that budget. If you take just a portion of it, 10 to 20% is what we recommend, and test, then the rest of that 80 or 90% is going to work that much harder for you, because you're going to find those outliers that really perform that you might not have found otherwise, right? So, we have a calculator on our website that will actually, like, before testing and after testing, right? You put in kind of your spend, how much you'd want to spend on testing, and we show you the difference of, like, the conversions you would get without testing and the conversions you would get with testing. And, assuming that you're going to find some sort of winner, even if it's by a small percentage, that rest of that ad budget is going to work harder for you.
Is this based on data that you have, based on like customer data?
Yeah, based on kind of average success of our customers.
Okay, that's interesting. We will definitely include that in the show notes. You discussed a bit using customer data and like using the voice of the customer. And one thing I really liked about the structure of your website and how you do things from a constant point is your case studies hub page, and the fact that you get really detailed with each case study that you feature in the hub page. Can you please elaborate a bit or speak to begin with about turning customer stories into narratives that you feature on your blog, and maybe elaborate a bit on, like, how do you think about using the voice of the customer?
Yes, absolutely. This is such a great question. So I'm really proud of our case study page. We actually not just launched it not too long ago, because what we were seeing was a couple of things. So, again, we're very small. The process of getting a very long form case study written, approved internally, approved by a customer up on the site, right, can sometimes be very long. And we wanted a way, like, just to move faster with everything we do. We're trying to move quickly, right? And so something that we decided to do was like, well, let's create these mini case studies. Let's just kind of put, like, the top line headline, a great stat, the customer logo. And if there's something deeper to read about, you can click into it, you can read. But if not, it's just kind of this overwhelming, like, wall of success of our customers. And I love that we did that, because I think it just, some people really like those long form case studies, especially, like, as you say, if they're written in a way that feels like a story that you can follow. But some people, they just want to see the data. Like, they just want to see, like, okay, yeah, clearly this company has helped these brands in some way, and I now want to learn more. So, I think meeting your customer where they're at in terms of, like, the depth that they want to go into in your content, give them options, feels right. In terms of actually turning them into stories, I think the process is pretty simple in my mind. I think, I usually sit down with a customer for about 30 minutes. And I think my process is really to, like, ask questions that are going to get them to tell stories. So something that I always tell people who are just starting out is, like, don't ask, hey, has our tool helped you? Ask it in a way like, tell me about a time that Marpipe really made a difference for you. And immediately they're going to go into story mode. Another question I like to ask is, what happened on the day that you decided you needed a tool like Marpipe? because that's where you're going to get all those really rich pain points. Oh my gosh, my team was like testing manually. It was taking them forever. They were like breaking their backs. They never really had time to like, do the things they really wanted to work on because, they were doing all this other stuff. And we just thought we needed a way to figure this out, some other tool. So you start to get like really rich kind of emotional stories, much more so than if you just kind of ask a question that's not going to prompt them to talk in that way. So I think that's really that's the key. And then, from there, your job is pretty easy. You take that story and you can kind of build it into a really nice narrative. Of course, I love to use examples. Being an ad tech tool, we have lots of really here's their top ad and here's, how it performed. And here's kind of how they used it they took those insights and used it in a radio script. And those things are really, really interesting and visuals like that. And if you can kind of help people along and break up some of that text a bit with, examples that they can kind of see and learn from, that just makes the story so much better.
I find a lot of value in the way you conduct these interviews. And even though basic, I don't find it to be so basic because I think that most people focus on the wrong questions when interviewing customers, while what you mentioned may not be used just for turning this interview into a customer story, but also it can be leveraged and used from an acquisition standpoint. Okay, so this is how people, I don't know, feel in general when they are about to start an online search about a tool like Marpipe, for example. So I see a lot of value there when it comes to interviewing customers.
Yeah, and actually, I think I love picking up customer language as is and using it verbatim in our content on our website. That's actually how I was able to drive a 40% uptick in people going to the demo sign up page. I just continued to test out different versions of what our customers told us on our homepage and our H1, and finding kind of the best version of that, which almost always is the exact way the customer has said it. And so, just kind of trying to listen to what they're saying and apply it to your content in a way that lets people like them who are reading it know, we understand you because we talk to people like you all the time.
Yeah, that's a good point. And going back to your case studies hub page, it's a wall of success, and it gets you convinced because as I see it, someone needs to see the data first to decide to dive deeper into a case study for a company in their industry, for example, and say, okay, so they did it for a hotel or whatever. So I can check more details to see if this tool can help my company as well. So well done regarding that.
Thank you.
Another thing I liked actually, as I was doing research for this episode, was the definitive guide to modern creative testing that you have published on your website. First of all, can you please explain the logic behind it? And would you say that it play a role in your customer's lifecycle journey?
Yeah, the definitive guide to creative testing was actually the first big evergreen piece that I created for Marpipe last year, right after I started. When I got there, we didn't have much because they had never had a content marketer before. They were kind of creating things as they could while they tried to do their other jobs and build this company. And so it felt like we needed a really nice, big, meaty piece on the site that could be kind of like our stake in the ground of what we do, how we do it, and how it helps. And again, like an educational guide, because not a lot of people, have tried multivariate testing before. They're relatively familiar with A/B testing, but this is relatively new. And so to give people a resource to go to really understand, how we work. It was built with our customers in mind. It does go pretty in depth into, how to actually run a test on Marpipe, how to design an ad modularly so that you can test efficiently and get really clean and valid data. So it does go pretty deep. And the idea was that, yes, our customers would really benefit from this, but also that, prospects, people who are interested in what we're doing, would also see this and see us as an authority. We wanted to use it to build credibility, and really be seen as a helpful partner in your creative testing endeavors.
And also, side benefits from creating this guide is that it could get visibility in Google and get you some visits as well. Which last time I checked, it does. Like, it ranks for I don't know exactly. I can't remember the exact term, but it ranks in a very high position for some very good terms that are connected to the product's capabilities.
Absolutely.
Speaking of creating content for a search audience, is there anything you do to ensure optimization on a page level? Is SEO content, let's say, in general, something that you're interested in, or at this stage, at this point, not yet?
Yes, 100%. So I know enough about SEO to be dangerous. I'm not an expert by any means. I'm barely a novice, but I know the best practices. I know that there are certain terms that we want to rank for, and making sure that those are present in our H1s, in our URLs, making sure that we're using our descriptions and our H2s, to our best of our ability to rank for those. That worked pretty well for a while. I was able to increase organic site traffic by a decent amount, just by, one, I think, keeping those things in mind, and two, keeping that, again, cadence of a weekly blog post up when we had nothing before, right? And so the idea of Google's something's happening over here. They're actually creating stuff. I have things to crawl. I think helped us out a lot. There did come a point recently, though, where we started to plateau, and I kind of knew my knowledge had run out, and I wasn't going to be able to really turn it around based on what I know. And so we did just recently bring in an SEO agency to help us with that. They create these amazing outlines for us based on, the search terms that we've decided we want to go after. We're building kind of, campaigns about certain search terms into content. And those are really valuable, high level pieces around, what is multivariate testing? What is performance creative? What are the best practices? How to get started, right? So again, those probably aren't going to be something that drive business tomorrow. But a couple things, again, as a startup, we want to be valuable to not only our customers, but our investors and for the future. And so being able to rank for those search terms makes Marpipe more valuable as a whole, because we are ranking for those terms. Two, that will drive business in the future. That's what's going to hopefully bring pipeline in 6, 8, 12 months down the road. And so, thinking, I think, that far out is really important, especially for kind of a new solution to a problem that people already have and might not be aware that this is even a solution, right? So we kind of have to catch them searching for periphery terms about ad testing to draw them in.
That makes sense. As we are running out of time, and I have one last question for you. You have approximately 3 years in the B2B SaaS world, and I'd like to know what are where and maybe still are the biggest challenges and learnings from these 3 years.
Whew, man, this is a good one. Okay, challenges. There are so many. I think every day is like a new challenge. I love to learn. I love learning about this business. Even when I was in advertising, and I loved advertising as well, I never soaked it up like I have been in these past 3 years of just taking everything in, listening to podcasts, watching webinars, right? And I think one of the biggest challenges is there's just so much that you can do. There's so much that you can learn. There are so many channels, right? There's just so much. And I think you really have to pick and double down on and be very bullish on the things, the one or two or three things that really work for you. But first you have to find out what those are. So you have to do a lot of those things. You have to try different channels. You have to test a lot of different things. You have to, repurpose a piece in many different ways and kind of see what hits. And once you can figure that out, then you can really okay, I know this channel and this format or this topic really, really sits well with our audience. And I'm going to focus my efforts there. But getting to that point and kind of knowing what's working is a ton of work, is a lot of upfront kind of putting pokers in many fires. And that's a big challenge, right? Especially when you're first starting out at a brand or you're trying to build a brand, to kind of figure out what that is. And learnings, let me see. I just love learning about this discipline. I will sign up for webinars. I will, buy downloads. I just want to know more. LinkedIn has been such a huge source of learning for me in terms of just following other content marketers who are incredible at their craft and learning from them. And I think just if you can just take that in a little bit every day, listening to the podcasts that really inspire you and learning from those, right? There are certain things that's I'll listen to a podcast. I'm man, that's a great idea. I don't know if it'll work for us, but there's got to be some nugget in there that will, and trying to distill down what you loved about what you heard from that person. For instance, Gong is incredible, right? Their marketing is amazing. Everyone loves what they do, but Gong has a huge team and great budgets, and not everyone has that. They have this program called their raving fans, and everyone at Marpipe was raving fans, this is amazing, can we do something like this? And we can't do something that big. We just don't have the manpower, woman power. We don't have the budgets at the moment, right? But we kind of figured out okay, the thing we love about that program is that they celebrate the customer. They're really putting a spotlight on the customers that love Gong so much and use it in really interesting ways. And we were well, how can we do that ourselves? What's I love to say minimum viable content. What is the MVC of that for us? And we came up with this idea of every month in our customer newsletter to highlight the top 3 testers of the month. Give them I put a little gold, silver, and bronze emoji right next to their name, right? Who's on the podium for October. And it's funny because it's really spurred some competition. People love seeing their name in the newsletter. And so we kind of were able to take that thing that someone else did that works really well for them, but we aren't able to do yet, and turn it into something that made sense for us and, had the same kind of core of celebrating the customer. So I think, go out and listen to the greats, learn from people who inspire you. And if you hear an idea that you love, figure out why you love it so much and try to create some version of that for yourself and see if it works.
That's great. That was all very insightful. Thank you very much for your time, Jess. My last question for you, CTA, for our listeners, where can people find out more about you and Marpipe and get in touch if they'd like to?
Yes, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. Jess Cook on LinkedIn. There's a few of them, but I'm the only one at Marpipe. Marpipe.com. And then Resting Ad Face is our podcast. So if you're listening to this, you're looking for another podcast to listen to, Resting Ad Face is great.
We will drop it in the show notes along with Marpipe's website and your LinkedIn profile. That was all Very insightful. Jess, thank you very much for being on the show. And who knows, looking forward to a very interesting and exciting discussion with you in the future.
Likewise. Thanks, George.
Before you go, I'd like to give a quick shout out to the sponsor for this episode, Ahrefs. Ahrefs provides you with an all-in-one SEO toolset that does everything from rank tracking to backlink analysis, keyword research, and technical audits. The best part, you can now use Ahrefs Webmaster Tools for free to identify and prioritize optimization opportunities for your website, see all the keywords that your web pages are ranking for, take a close look at the websites that link back to and refer you in their content, and analyze other websites to find out what drives their rankings. Visit ahrefs.com/AWT and sign up for free.